as quickly as I was able to start these, they ended just as quickly as well, recording these intros, I should say. Yes, right now I'm recording the final intro in the Creative Outlet Gaming Birthday Extravaganza series for the fall of 2021. But for you, the person listening or watching or consuming this, however you may be, this is not the last of the Creative Outlet Gaming Birthday Extravaganza, because this is actually being released either in time or just, at the closest Monday in time for the anniversary of the series that we're focused on today. And I do believe I saved my favorite one for last, the Ace Attorney series. So yes, indeed, today we're going to be focused on Phoenix Wright and Company and all of his games. Now, what's interesting, though, is there actually hasn't been any Ace Attorney-related news that's been released since I recorded the episode for this. In fact, the only thing that's changed is now the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles is officially released, allowing Daegyakuten Saiban 1 and 2 to officially be available to those of us in the West. And yes, of course I have the physical copy. In fact, let me see. I have a good few props I could pull out here just to show off, but of course I am just a mess here, so I'd have to figure out how to, get all this stuff over here without hopefully making a ton of noise. That would be distracting. Seeing the cartridge isn't that important, but indeed I do have it. And, that's not the only way that I've celebrated my love of Ace Attorney this year. In fact, I actually haven't played a ton of the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. I've only finished episode 1, or Case 1, as I should really call it, The Adventure of the Great Departure. And I tell you, that case, not that I want to turn this into like a mini review of the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles, especially since I've only played one case, or just review all the individual cases, but I like the case, but there's no reason why it had to be 3 hours long. That was the only aspect I didn't like about it. In fact, that's something that I've tended to find about the cases in the series that I find to be the weakest, is just that they become so weak because they're so darn long. And, like one of the cases that I've just refused to play anymore at this point is Rise from the Ashes, because it's such a long case, and I just can't handle super long cases anymore. They feel like a giant waste of time. And in fact, just like I said, there are two other ways that I've really been celebrating the series over the course of this summer. And one thing that I've started, and in fact almost finished already in this past month, is the fan translation of Ace Attorney Investigations 2. In this case, I'm just using the Prosecutor's Path fan translation. And I tell you, I like it. But there are definitely some things I notice in Investigations 2 that I'm not a fan of. Some that are, I think, a consequence of the game, and some that I think are a consequence of it being a fan translation. As far as, let's start there, actually, with the latter. There are definitely some points when I've played Ace Attorney Investigations 2, and I suppose this really doesn't matter for folks who really aren't all that familiar with the series, but I would imagine if you're listening to this, you're probably a pretty decent fan, and just let me get this out of the way. When we get into the overview portion of this episode, it's spoilers abound, so if you have not played the series, the Ace Attorney games, I would just not bother listening to this. As much as I appreciate you wanting to be a patron of this podcast, not in the monetary sense, since I do not have a Patreon of any sort. I'm just saying a patron as far as coming in to listen or watch. I would say wait until you've played the mainline games, because otherwise, or if you don't care about spoilers, because I'm going to be spoiling everything rotten here. But that's your first warning. There will be at least another couple of warnings in the main episode itself. But I digress. But to actually talk about Ace Attorney Investigations 2, the fan translation-y part that I didn't like is it definitely felt like, and to be fair, this improved, I feel like, significantly after the first case. There were plenty of lines that feel like they were directly translated, and this is something that was true of the Scarlet Study Great Ace Attorney translations as well. And now I haven't played it, but I have seen some footage of it. But if you compare the lines of characters in the fan translation of the 3DS games and the actual official lines that came out, the official lines in English just have so much more personality, whereas some of the lines in the fan translation feel much more direct and flat. And so, I don't. I don't want to disparage these folks' works, but I do feel like some of the lines in Ace Attorney Investigations 2, at least, again, the fan translation, came off similarly. Like, there were a lot of times where Miles Edgeworth was thinking the phrase, "that man." And I'm certain that that is what he said in the Japanese script, but sometimes you just gotta switch it up or put in something that just uses Edgeworth's personality instead of just doing like, "what is that man thinking?" Just some way to spice up the dialogue. But look, if that's my greatest flaw of the fan, wow, I really can't speak. If that is what I consider the greatest flaw of the fan translation, they did pretty darn good. But as far as the actual game itself, I don't know if this is just a matter of me not fully paying attention, like reading a line and not fully digesting it and going into the next ones, or if I'm just reliant now on having a backlog of being able to be like, wait, what? Let me go back and reread the lines, since that's a feature in Ace Attorneys 5, 6, and now the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. But I feel like there were a good few times in Investigations 2 where it was like a character would, like, something would happen, and Edgeworth and Kay and Gumshoe would all learn about something. But then when you talk to another character that shouldn't know about that bit of information, they somehow know it. And I was just very confused. And now again, like I said, I want to be fair. Maybe this is just me just going through the dialogue too quickly and just missing things. But it did seem like that happened like 3 or 4 times. That really pulled me out of the experience. And similarly, and this is going to be a big one, I feel like the third case in the game, widely considered one of the best cases in the series, doesn't fully live up to the hype. And it comes down for me to that same issue I have that I already outlined, is just too darn long. It doesn't, like, I don't want to give any details or spoilers on this case. I'll be merciful here. But I think the idea of it is fantastic. I actually think they pulled off the execution, but I just wished there were a few ways that it could have been shortened along the way. If it had just been shortened, because this is actually the longest case in Investigations too. I think technically the 5th and final case is probably longer time-wise, and I'm still almost at the end of that as I'm recording this. And I definitely just played what feels like the longest single segment without a to-be-continued screen. But Case 3 was quite literally split into 9 parts. So there were 8 to-be-continued instances, and it just felt like there was just so much. So, but like I said, if that's the greatest of my quibbles with the game, I mean, it's a pretty darn good game. I don't know if I would quite rank Investigations 2 higher than I would rank Trials and Tribulations. I just haven't played it as many times. But I would say it is certainly following in Trials and Tribulations' footsteps as far as continuing with the idea of, let's just take advantage of the ability that we have to reuse a bunch of stuff to make the game fit onto a DS cartridge, and just build everything by reusing characters and really, really fleshing them all out. And I mean, I know how the game ends, so I already know who the big bad is. But I think it's ingenious to see, even with the new characters who do get introduced in every single case, that it's like we still keep revisiting older characters from older cases and really learning how this giant plot all twists and turns and folds together into one giant, just insane little mess. And I'm loving every little second of it. So, but I'd have to play, like I said, I'd have to play Investigations 2 at least one or two more times to really see where I think it ranks, but I'll have to see in the end how that final impact comes, because that's the thing for me that also really bumped Trials and Tribulations over the top, is in the end, it's just like, oh, it hits, man. And, Justice for All, to its credit, as much as I do think it is the weakest original trilogy game, and actually just one of the weaker in general Ace Attorney games, it really, really tries hard with Farewell My Turnabout to do the same thing. And I think it does mostly pull it off, but I don't think it has the same emotional impact that Trials and Tribulations had, what with, having the same characters come up and being problematic and just being like, oh, I hate this character so much because they're so evil. I think it's fantastic. As far as other ways that I've celebrated Ace Attorney this summer, I have to briefly get up, but I'm going to keep talking. I'm just going to see if I can grab one of these off of my shelf here. No. Oh, well. Here it is. So I don't know. I saw these pop up randomly on the Ace Attorney subreddit, either early this year or late last year. I had no idea where I could get these until I eventually found. So these, if I can pull it up here, this is just one of them. This is an Ace Attorney collectible pin done by Zen Monkey Studios, and I'm up to having 10 of these darn things. I'm gonna inevitably get them all. But at some point here in this studio, and inevitably wherever my final... well, not final, but my next place of residence, wherever that may be, I plan to get a board in the shape of, if you look on the logo here, right above the big A at the top, there's that little spark-looking thing. I want to get a piece of cork custom cut in the shape of that, and just put all of these on there and display it for all to see, because I think these are pretty darn cool, and I want to have something thematically appropriate for that. So, I guess I didn't really need much Ace Attorney news, because I did have plenty of opinions to share and happenings on my own experiences with it this past summer to share. But nonetheless, we need to get into our going back in time, talking about what all I did, what all I recorded already earlier this summer for the Ace Attorney series. It was a very fun episode to do. I got all nice and dressed up for it, to be thematically in line with all these people in suits. So I just, I'm ready to send everyone back there, enjoy the episode. Like I said, this is one of my favorite ones to put on, so I will let everybody enjoy.